Fasten your seatbelts, everyone, because today we are going to be taking a deep dive into the world of Boeing.
Ah, Boeing.
You know, the name is practically synonymous with aviation, right?
Yeah.
Those iconic jets, the 707, the
Oh,
727.
yeah, the ones that really made jet setting like a dream for so many.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So Boeing, I mean, they started small, but they became a giant.
They did. It's a really incredible story. Starting in Seattle and then by the late 20th century, they were really the name in aerospace. I mean, the 747, their jumbo jet, that was a game changer.
It really was. Suddenly you could fly like hundreds of people across oceans. And Boeing, they were leading the way.
Oh, absolutely. A true pioneer.
Yeah, shrinking the world, right.
Yeah.
Connecting continents in a way that I don't think anyone really thought possible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But their story, it's not all smooth sailing. That reputation or just like engineering excellence, I think that gets challenged pretty seriously when we look at the 737 MAX.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case study, really. You have this drive for innovation and the immense pressure of global competition, and then ultimately the human cost when things go wrong.
It really is a story with everything: ambition, innovation, tragedy, even a fight for redemption.
Oh, for sure.
So before we get into the 737 MAX and all its, complexities, let's set the stage a little bit.
Okay.
Boeing, I mean, they weren't always this giant, right? How did they become so dominant in the first place?
Well, I think early on, their success was tied to a few key factors. They were pioneers in jet technology. They had a knack for building really reliable aircraft.
Yeah, I mean, the 707, for example, that was a huge gamble at the time, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it paid off big time.
It did.
It became the standard for commercial air travel, and it cemented Boeing's reputation as a leader.
And it wasn't just commercial planes either, right?
No, no, not at all.
I mean, they had their hands in military contracts, space exploration. They were everywhere.
Absolutely. I think that diversification was key. They were building bombers, tankers, even rockets.
Wow.
Yeah, and think about, the Apollo program, the moon landing. Boeing played a major part in all of that.
Yeah.
And I think this really gave them an edge, like a depth of expertise that really very few could match.
So they're building the future of flight in all its forms.
Pretty much.
But
yeah.
then, things started to change, right? The industry landscape shifted.
Yeah, a little bit.
Enter Airbus, their European rival.
Yeah.
How did that competition change the game for Boeing?
Well, I think Airbus brought a different philosophy to the table. They embraced fly-by-wire technology, which essentially means more computer control of the aircraft and theoretically greater safety.
Yeah.
And their A320 family, with its fuel efficiency and its focus on pilot control, that started winning over airlines around the world.
So Boeing, they had this reputation for really sturdy, reliable planes.
Right.
But Airbus is pushing the envelope with new technology.
Mm-hmm.
This must have put some pressure on Boeing?
Oh, absolutely. This is where I think the story gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Boeing's response was the 737 Next Generation series, the NG. It was a workhorse, a solid plane that airlines loved.
Right.
It became their best-selling model.
Huge for them.
A real cash cow for the company.
But Airbus, I mean, they weren't going to just sit back and relax, were they?
No, not at all. They upped the ante with the A320neo, which was basically a re-engined, even more fuel-efficient version of the A320.
Okay.
And orders started pouring in.
So now Boeing's facing a real challenge.
Oh, absolutely. They needed to respond, and they needed to respond quickly.
So, okay, the stage is set. We've got Boeing, the reigning champion. They're facing this, fierce challenger in Airbus.
Yeah.
And this is where the 737 MAX comes in, right?
Exactly.
It seemed like a routine update
Yeah.
to a tried-and-true design, but it ended up anything but routine.
Yeah, and that decision to create the 737 MAX instead of designing a completely new plane, I think that was a gamble. They were trying to leverage, the familiarity of the 737, the cost effectiveness of that platform. But as we'll see, that gamble, well, it came with some pretty unforeseen risks.
Risks that would lead to tragic consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But before we kind of delve into that darker side of the story, we need to get a little bit technical, right?
Okay.
We need to understand the 737 MAX itself.
Right.
And particularly this system that became infamous, the MCAS.
Yeah, the MCS, or Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, it was designed to address a very specific aerodynamic challenge.
Okay.
You see, to improve fuel efficiency, Boeing had fitted the 737 MAX with these larger, more powerful engines.
Okay.
But those engines, they changed the plane's center of gravity, making it prone to pitching up at high angles of attack.
So the bigger engines while good for fuel efficiency,
Yeah.
they were causing this potential instability.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So Boeing engineers, they developed MCS to automatically adjust the plane's horizontal stabilizer, essentially pushing the nose down if it sensed a dangerous pitch up. So in theory, it was a safety feature.
Right.
However, as we know, the design of the system, well, it proved to be fatally flawed.
And that flaw, that vulnerability, that's really going to be at the heart of the tragedies to come.
Yes, unfortunately.
So we've got these larger engines. They're changing the 737 MAX's aerodynamics, and MCAS is supposed to be like the safety net, right?
Right.
Preventing those dangerous pitch-ups.
Right. Right.
But what exactly went wrong with the system?
Well, the critical flaw was its reliance on a single angle of attack sensor, or AOA sensor.
Okay.
These sensors, they're located on either side of the cockpit, and they basically measure the angle of the plane's nose relative to the oncoming air.
Got it.
So if the AOA sensor detects a dangerously high angle of attack, suggesting the plane might be about to stall,
Yeah.
MCAS would activate and push the nose down.
So one tiny sensor, it basically held the fate of the entire plane.
Pretty much, yeah.
That seems, I don't know, kind of risky, right? Like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not all. Not only did MCS rely on this single point of failure, it was also designed to activate repeatedly and with significant force, potentially overriding pilot inputs.
Wow.
So imagine a scenario where that single AOA sensor malfunctions and it's sending erroneous data. MCS kicks in, forcing the nose down, even if the pilots are trying to pull up.
That's like a nightmare scenario, right?
It is.
Where this safety system is actually the thing that's putting the plane in danger.
Yeah, and tragically, that nightmare became a reality.
Yeah.
In both the Lion Air and Ethiopian Airlines crashes, investigators determined that it was faulty AOA sensors that triggered MCS, leading to those devastating crashes.
Those tragedies, they really shook the world. The 737 MAX was grounded globally, right?
It was.
It was a huge wake-up call, not just for Boeing, but for the whole aviation industry.
Oh, absolutely. The groundings, they sent shockwaves through the industry. Here was this plane, a flagship model from, one of the biggest names in aerospace, suddenly deemed unsafe to fly. The financial and reputational fallout for Boeing was immense.
Yeah, we're talking billions of dollars in losses, lawsuits, and their reputation, which was once, so sterling, was really tarnished.
It was, yeah.
And I think maybe even more damaging was the erosion of public trust.
Oh, for sure.
People started to question, had Boeing prioritized profits over safety? Did the rush to get this plane to market compromise its design?
Right. And then, internal documents later revealed that some employees had actually raised concerns about MCS.
Really?
Yeah, they even, mocked it internally.
That's just heartbreaking to think that those warnings might have been ignored.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, what was the culture like inside Boeing that allowed this to happen?
That's a key question, I think. There's this growing consensus that Boeing's, what was once a very strong engineering-driven culture, had shifted, perhaps under pressure to compete with Airbus,
Right.
towards a more cost-conscious, market-driven approach.
So the pressure to keep costs down and get that plane out the door quickly, maybe that kind of overshadowed these really crucial safety concerns.
That's certainly one of the theories investigators are exploring, yeah.
Yeah, it really raises this broader question, doesn't it? About, the balance between innovation, competition, and safety
It does.
in a high-stakes industry like aviation.
No, sure.
Okay, so we've got the 737 MAX. It's grounded. Boeing's under intense scrutiny. They're trying to fix MCS, rebuild trust. They're adding redundancies, improving pilot training, overhauling their safety protocols.
Yeah, a complete overhaul.
And by late 2020, regulators in the U.S., Europe, other parts of the world, they started clearing the 737 MAX to fly again.
They did, but the 737 MAX's troubles, well, they weren't over just yet.
No, not by a long shot. And, speaking of troubles, let's talk about that aft pressure bulkhead issue.
Okay.
For those who maybe aren't familiar with, all the technical jargon, can you explain what the aft pressure bulkhead is and why it's so important?
Sure. So think of the aft pressure bulkhead as like a dome-shaped wall that separates the pressurized passenger cabin from the unpressurized tail section of the plane.
Okay.
It's a critical component designed to maintain cabin pressure at high altitudes.
Right. Makes it safe and comfortable for passengers to breathe.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if this bulkhead fails, it could lead to a sudden loss of cabin pressure.
Right. It could. And that's a very serious safety risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in August of 2023, Boeing announced that some 737 MAX aircraft had actually been built with defective aft pressure bulkheads.
Oh, yeah.
They insisted it wasn't an immediate safety threat, but it was still a major setback.
It was.
It caused further delays in deliveries, added to the, growing list of problems plaguing the plane, and it further eroded public confidence.
It's like they were trying to climb out of this deep hole, but every time they took a step forward, something else pulled them back down.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
And then in September of that same year, another incident happened. That just added to the kind of anxiety surrounding the 737 MAX. An Alaska Airlines flight experienced a pressurization problem mid-flight.
Yeah, it forced an emergency landing.
It must have been terrifying for the passengers on board.
I'm sure it was.
Knowing the plane's history, knowing that it had been grounded once for safety concerns.
Right, and the Alaska Airlines incident, while thankfully it didn't result in any injuries, it really served as a stark reminder of this lingering distrust surrounding the 737 MAX.
Airlines were, working hard to assure passengers that the plane was safe.
They were.
But incidents like this, they just made it so much harder to rebuild that trust.
It did.
And then just a month later, in October of 2023, came the incident that really brought back those chilling memories of the 2018 and 2019 crashes.
Yeah, it was a big one.
A 737 MAX, operated by a foreign carrier, experienced an uncommanded pitch-down event during flight.
Yeah.
I mean, this wasn't just another technical glitch, right? This was like a ghost from the past.
It was. It was like all that progress just got wiped away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can you imagine, you're a passenger on that flight,
Okay.
knowing the history of this plane.
Yeah.
That feeling of just unease, that not knowing what's happening.
Right.
It's just a huge blow to confidence, not just in the 737 MAX, but in Boeing as a whole.
And this time, it wasn't about, a single faulty sensor or something like that.
Yeah.
This pitch-down event, it involved a completely different system.
It did, and, the investigation's still ongoing, but early reports, they suggest that the issue stemmed from, a software glitch in the flight control system, completely unrelated to MCAS.
So if it wasn't MCAS, what else could go wrong?
Right. It raises a whole new set of questions.
Had they truly addressed all of those systemic issues that led to those initial tragedies?
Yeah, that's a big question.
So where does this leave Boeing now? I mean, they've spent years trying to fix this plane, rebuild trust, and now this happens. It feels like a really, really steep uphill battle.
It is. It's a critical juncture for the company. They're facing this huge challenge, not just in terms of engineering and safety, but also perception, right?
Right.
The 737 MAX has become almost synonymous with failure.
Yeah.
With this disregard for safety. To regain that trust they've lost, they need to go above and beyond just demonstrating that the plane is safe.
It's almost like they need to reinvent themselves, right?
Yeah.
Prove that they've learned from these mistakes and that safety is truly their top priority.
Exactly, yeah. It's not just about fixing those technical issues.
Yeah.
It's about rebuilding a culture of safety, transparency, accountability.
And that's a much bigger challenge, I think.
It is. It goes way beyond engineering fixes.
We've talked a lot about, the technical aspects, the corporate culture.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember the human cost of all of this.
Absolutely.
346 lives were lost in those two crashes.
Yeah.
Families were shattered, communities devastated.
You're absolutely right. It's so easy to get caught up in, the technical details, the financial implications. Right. But that human impact, it's immeasurable. And, those lives lost, they can never be brought back.
No.
The scars from those tragedies, those will remain forever.
It's a reminder that at the end of the day, this isn't just about, planes and profits. It's about people. And the decisions that are made by companies, by engineers, they have real-world consequences.
It's real-world consequences, and it's a powerful lesson, and it extends far beyond the aviation industry, really.
Yeah, I think so.
In any field, whether it's technology, healthcare, manufacturing, whatever it is, prioritizing safety and ethical considerations has got to be paramount.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Boeing and, that really turbulent journey of the 737 MAX, what are the key takeaways?
Well, I think the 737 MAX saga, it really serves as a stark warning about the dangers of complacency, of prioritizing speed and profits over safety and transparency.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that even the most successful companies, they can stumble. And when they do, the consequences can be absolutely catastrophic.
And it's a reminder, too, that we as consumers, as citizens, We have a role to play, right?
We do.
In holding these companies accountable,
Yeah.
demanding that safety and ethical conduct be a top priority.
Absolutely. We need to be asking those tough questions, demanding transparency, and making informed choices.
Well said.
The 737 MAX story, it's far from over.
Yeah, it's not over.
Only time will tell if Boeing can truly regain that trust they've lost.
Yeah.
But one thing's certain, the world is watching.
They are. Well, folks, there you have it, our deep dive into the rise and fall and maybe the ongoing struggle of Boeing's 737 MAX.
A fascinating story.
It is. It's complex, full of twists and turns, but ultimately it's a story about human choices, about that balance between ambition and responsibility.
I agree.
We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought, maybe some insights into the challenges facing the aviation industry.
Yeah, for sure.
And who knows, perhaps even some lessons that you can apply to your own lives, no matter what field you're in.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.